How do you get the best Sony a7 III settings for video? I'm going to show you that, the initial setup, the customizable buttons, and the function menu, all set up, designed for productivity and efficiency in workflow for video. My name is Luke, creator of WeddingFilmCoach.com and executive producer at LW Films, and Wedding Film Coach is all about helping people get started with video. Specifically in wedding filmmaking, we want to help wedding filmmakers define their brand, develop their craft, and design a profitable business. And so whether you're just getting started with wedding videos, or you want to do commercials, or you just enjoy family filmmaking, you're in the perfect place, because each video we set out is going to help you be a little bit better than before and grab your edge over the competition. And so we are in a series right now on the Sony a7 III. I love this camera. It is so functional. It's got some incredible features on it, and it can also be a bit overwhelming because when you get into the menu, it gives you so many different options. And so I wanted to take some time today to show you how to optimize and set up your camera initially for a video workflow. And I think from these settings, you can kind of tweak it and hone it in, dial it in exactly what's best for you, but this is going to give you a great starting point. So I'm going to flip the camera to just in front of my menu here so we can see, and you can go through with me step by step on your Sony a7 III on how to get this set up for video. Okay, so here we're in our menu section, and I've gone ahead and see the top here, we have different kind of categories of menus, and then in each of those categories we have different pages. So you can see where I'm moving from page 3 to 4 to 5. And just real quick, I want to go through these. There's a few settings we're going to come back to under category 1, quality image size. However, most of the settings for video, I want to keep this quick, are going to be in this second category, movie, and in these different pages. So let's start here with exposure mode. You want to make sure, I think this will be all the way up here in P. Whenever you first get it, program auto, you want to change that to manual exposure, and that's just going to allow you to adjust your shutter speed, your aperture, your ISO separately and independently from the other functions. You can always set your mode dial up here to auto if you don't want to mess with the settings, or A or S or whatever, but just keep that exposure mode in manual exposure for right now. File format, this is where you're going to say whether you want it in 4K or HD. For video, don't ever go down here to AV, it's just a lower quality codec. And so I'll live between these two. Again, this is going to give you your 1080, and you can go between 60 frames a second, 30 frames a second, 24 frames a second, all the way up to 120 frames a second. And again, I'll go through that a little bit later. Maybe in a different video, but for now, know that these are the settings that I usually keep it on: 4K, 24 frames a second. S&Q settings, this is for your slow motion and quick motion kind of presets up here on the dial. I rarely use these. However, if you do want to use them, know that your record setting, this is going to be what your result is going to be. So the kind of video you want to come out of this is going to be 24 frames a second, but the frame rate going into it is 120 frames a second. So it's saying that, okay, this is going to be slowed down 5 times because, excuse me, because 24 frames a second divided by 120 frames a second is going to be 20%. It's going to be 5 times slow motion. And so coming back, proxy recording, I keep my proxy recording off. If you're a beginner, I just encourage you to say proxy recording off. AF drive speed, this is going to be important. AF drive speed is how quickly it's going to change focus points. And so if you have something that, if you want to rack focus from something that is that is closer to you back to something that is farther away, then if you want it to be real snappy, change normal to fast, and it's just going to be really, really snappy. If you change it to slow, it's going to be really slow and buttery, just very smooth. If you're wanting some specific creative responses there with the AF, you can put it on slow. However, for a nice kind of in between, I'll leave it on normal. It's still fast enough to get me focused where I need to focus on, but it's also slow enough to still be creative and pleasing to the eye. The tracking sensitivity is how responsive it's going to be when tracking a single subject. So you're not necessarily trying to change focus from one subject to another, but you're just trying to you're telling this brilliant autofocus in this camera how quickly you want it to track your subject if it's moving. And so I've been keeping it on responsive. Some people don't like it. It's still a bit too snappy and jerky for them. It's been working well for me in this camera, a lot better than the a6500 before. So I keep that on responsive. And audio out timing, I keep it on live. Wind noise reduction on. Marker display, I'll come back to that. Keep going, none of that matters. Steady shot settings, keep it on all the time. Zoom setting, this is something you want to come in and change. Zoom setting, I think it's on optical zoom only. You want to change it to on clear image zoom. Clear image zoom is Sony's kind of proprietary wizardry, and it allows you to essentially digitally zoom into the image, crop into the image without sacrificing much of the image quality as you would in post-production. So if you do this in camera, then it's going to be a lot better image quality than if you were to do it in post-production. So those are the zoom settings. Finder monitor, I just leave this on monitor. Zebra settings, we'll come back to that in the custom button. Doesn't matter. Custom keys, okay, here we go. Let's go one more. Movie button. Let's do that always. You can say movie mode only. That's if you only have your mode dial set to movie. I keep it on always because I use the 1 and 2 custom dials to be my movie modes also. So leave that on always. Okay, so that is the majority of our settings there. We're gonna come back to page 8 here, which is our custom keys and our function menu setup. But for right now, I want to go all the way over here to setup 1 and change a few things here. So monitor brightness, we're gonna say sunny weather. This is just gonna get us the brightest that this menu can be, which I like. As long as you don't let that fool you into thinking that something is overexposed or you're exposed correctly and maybe it's actually underexposed, just keep an eye on your metering and you'll be fine. So viewfinder brightness, auto, because I've never really used that. You don't want to change any of this other stuff. Display quality high. Power save start time. This is whenever your camera is going to turn off automatically, if you're just letting it sit there. I keep it on 2 minutes just because that's a happy medium. It's not going to drain the battery down too much. If you're doing something like this, where if I wasn't going to be changing the menu settings, but you just wanted your camera to stay on, even at idle, change it to 30 minutes. And I think even if you put an HDMI cord in there and you're recording something to an external recorder, it automatically stays on. But I keep mine on 2 minutes. Auto power off temperature. This is an important one. This is where a lot of people are saying their cameras are overheating. If it's on standard, then they're saying it's overheating. I'll go ahead and put mine on high. This means that it's going to give me a little warning sign here. The temperature of this device may rise to prioritize recording time. Would you like to change the setting? Yes. I've done some tests with this with overheating. It doesn't get too hot. It's not going to damage your camera. You're fine. Go ahead and set this to high. That way it's not going to be an inconvenience to you. Touch panel pad. Okay, here we go. This is what we need. Touch operation. Let's go back here to turn touch operation on. This is going to allow you, not in the menus, but in the autofocus, going to allow you to touch your screen and allow you to set your focus points. That's a must-have. I keep mine on touch panel only. If you change it to touchpad, it's more like you use that with the viewfinder. And so we're always using our monitor, so touch panel only. Touchpad settings, again, doesn't matter. We're using the panel. All of this doesn't matter. Go ahead and set all this up whenever you first start. Set up your camera, just your date and time, your area setting, copyright info if you care about that. As a videographer, I don't. This is where you'll format your SD cards, file number, keep that on series, and all of this stuff shouldn't matter. version, this is where you'll see what version your camera is, your firmware. And so there's an update, there's a 1.01 update that I haven't downloaded yet. And it also tells me my lens version, which is helpful as well. There's usually not a lot of updates for lenses, but that's where you'll go to see where it is. And so, all right. And then this last one up here, this is the star. This is the My menu. And so this is where I want to start with you guys for custom buttons and custom menu settings. Go in your My menu, and it's not going to look like this at first. It's going to look like this. And you'll say Add Item. And then you'll say, okay, yes, I want you to add this item, Finder Monitor. And it's going to give you an option of where you want to put that. So if you want to put it at the start, you can put it right there. If you want to put it later on, put it right there. And I'm going to come back to this, and these are the things that I keep in my menu just for quick access, so I don't have to worry about going through each of these other menus and finding the right page and then getting what I want and then coming back to shooting. And so I put all these in my menu, like I talked about earlier, your file format, so switching between 4K and HD, switching between 24 frames a second, 60 frames a second if I'm in HD. Format, this is just where I can format my SD cards really quickly. AF drive speed, I talked about that earlier, responsive, normal. Airplane mode, I keep this here in case I want to turn my Bluetooth on and send things to my phone. And then a few more things, if I'm ever taking pictures with this, then I keep my drive mode and my bracket settings here so I can tell it how fast I want it to shoot. And then if I want to do some HDR stuff, I'll use my bracket settings. Okay. Now, let's go back to custom buttons and menu functionality. Okay, so in video, this is your video custom keys. So this is pretty brilliant. What they've done here is they've allowed you to set up custom buttons for each program that you're in. So whether you're in a photography setting or your video setting or you're in playback, they've allowed you to preset each custom button, which is brilliant. And so it just gives you a lot more customizability to be able to really hone in your camera for what you want to do. And so we're in video, so we're going to come in right here, custom key, and see it gives us all the different custom buttons that we can use. So it's the control wheel, this thing, that means if you spin it around, so I have it set to my ISO. The custom button 1, that is up here on the top, that's my focus magnifier. That's simply meaning that it's going to zoom in, not on the footage, but on the LCD screen for me to get a better look at what's happening if I need to set my focus manually, something like that. The zoom is our clear image zoom, back what I talked about earlier, and so that's going to allow me to crop in digitally without sacrificing much image quality. Custom button 3, this guy up here, this is one of the new custom buttons they have on this camera, which I'm loving this. I'm really trying to play around with it. I set that to be my aps-c Super 35 or full frame select, and so I can toggle between my Super 35 or my full frame settings right there, and it's really great for whenever I'm using an aps-c lens, my 10-18, and I can not worry about the vignetting around it. My custom button 4 is right here. That's also the trash can default button, but I use it to set my audio levels, and it's, you know, it just takes some getting used to. Definitely don't hit that whenever you're in playback, or it will automatically delete your footage. You definitely don't want to do that. Going into 2 here, the multi-selector is this guy right here, and so if you hit it in, if you press it in, just like a joystick, it's going to give me my focus area. My center button, this guy right here, that's going to turn my center lock on AF, and that's where it's going to track a subject for you, and you can kind of see it, a white box appears around it, and it's going to track it all around the frame. I'll use that every now and then. My left button is my display, my marker displays, and so if I hit that, see it comes up with my crop markers. That's the 235-1, I think, and it's just to let me know, okay, if I want to letterbox something, that's the framing that I'm going to have, and so it just helps me keep in mind whenever I'm filming if I may want to letterbox something in post. Coming on down, zebra display select. This is gonna give us our zebra options. And take in that. So it's just gonna turn my zebras on or off. Again, it's a black screen right now, so nothing's overexposed, but it'll let me know if anything is overexposed. And down is my finder monitor select. I will use this if I'm outside. If I'm outside, I'll hit that and then you can see it in there. But if I'm usually, most of the time, probably 90% of the time, I'm using this right here. I think that the focus peaking is better if you're using the electronic viewfinder. So if I have like an 85 millimeter 1.4 on, something like that, and I want to manual focus, I'll usually go into this viewfinder and it helps me get it just a little bit more sharp than the monitor does. So let's go back into our settings. That last one there, the auto exposure lock button, I've set that to my white balance, and that's been working out pretty good for me. The AF on button up here, I just set that to toggle between autofocus and manual focus. So if I'm in manual focus, if I'm in autofocus and I get my focus and I want it to stay there, I don't want it to track or I don't want it to move, then I'll go ahead and hit this button real quick. Just make sure you don't hit that record button right by it. But if you hit that AF button, the AF on button, it's going to take it out of autofocus into manual focus, and it's not going to move. So I know my focus is secure. Nothing's going to offset that. And focus hold button, I don't have one of those. Some lenses have focus hold buttons up here. So yeah, I didn't mess with that. All right, hey, that is it for the custom buttons. Let's go back down to the function menu set, and then we're almost done. And so this is whenever I hit my function button right there. These are the options that are going to pull up in that menu. And you see here I have my metering mode, my gamma display assist. I usually don't use that, rarely, but I leave it on there. My steady shot adjustment, if I have a manual focus, or if I have a third-party lens on here, I have a Rokinon 85 millimeter that I use, I'll have to go in here manually and set it to 85 so it knows to account for that in the image stabilization. This is the center lock-on AF. This is the face priority AF. This is the aps-c Super 35 shoot. And again, I have a custom button for that. My white balance. These are my picture profiles. That's a big one. Focus area, zebra level, peak on. So you can see where it's awesome that we have all these custom buttons, because all the things that I would use in my function menu are pretty much already covered in the actual buttons. But it's nice to have just a separate spot. If I get into my menu and I'm not sure what I'm looking for, I can see it real quick. And or if I forget, if I haven't used this camera for a while and I forget which buttons I've mapped something to, I can go into my function menu real quick and it's going to show me exactly what's in there. And so I'm going to go back to this real quick. And so if you want to take a screenshot of that, you can. If you want to set yours up like me. The function menu isn't quite as important now, since I have a couple of more, actually I think I have 3 more custom buttons that I can use with the multi-selector, the AEL, the AF on, and the C3 up there. All of those are effectively new buttons, mainly because we have our new record button over here. It's not on the side like it used to be. So yeah, those are what I have for my settings. So I hope, gosh, this has been long-winded, but I hope this has been helpful to you. Hey, thanks for walking through that with me. I hope it was helpful to you. And time for our question of the day. And the question of the day actually kind of goes back to one of those menu settings that I'm going to make a whole other video about. But it's what picture profile do I use? People who use Sony cameras, there are so many different picture profiles you can use, and they're great for different instances and for different needs. But specifically, I use a variation of picture profile 8 for most of my work. This just gives me a nice flat image that isn't too flat. I can still give the raw footage to my clients if they want that, and it doesn't look horrible like S-Log does, but it also gives me enough room in post to color it, to make it look beautiful, and to make sure I have enough room there to make it look great in post. And so picture profile 8 is what I use specifically. I'll set the gamma to Cine 4, and then I'll change the color space to S Gamut 3 Cine. And that does the job for me. Every now and then I'll branch out and do some other creative stuff. I'll use S-Log every now and then, but that is my bread and butter most of the time. Hey, if you are planning on purchasing the Sony a7 III, then I would really appreciate it if you use the links below. It's no extra cost to you, and it actually helps me out a little bit. It helps me build our channel and make great videos like this for you guys. And so that would help me out. Also, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification button to make sure you are in the know whenever we release videos, and that way you'll have that much more of an edge over your competition. Thanks for joining us. I'm Luke at weddingfilmcoach.com, and I'll see you in the next video.